So if you joined us last week for the block party, you know that we began a series on relationships in which we're talking about how we forgive and love those who hurt us. That there are times in our lives when someone may have caused pain, may have wounded our souls, or have broken some sort of relationship in our lives, and we need to begin to forgive them or not hold a grudge. So the question is, how do we go about this forgiveness? Like, how much do we actually forgive someone? Because in our lives, we all have experienced a relationship, a problem, or an issue with someone that is completely unfair. That they have done something to us, that they have hurt us in some way, and we feel like we need to get revenge, that there needs to be some sort of payment, that there needs to be some sort of justice on our part in order for us to be able to feel complete and get closure on that situation. And so a lot of times what we can do is try to go out of our way to be able to gain fairness, to be able to gain some sort of win in that relationship in order to make ourselves seem like we got what we were owed. However, the Bible actually constantly fights against that. Jesus constantly provokes us to live differently in this world and to actually be different in the relationships and in the pain that has been caused to us in our world today. In Matthew 18, there is a story that Jesus begins to share about forgiveness as his disciples begin to explore this topic. And he shares it and he begins to talk about a man who owed debts to another man. In Matthew 18, he says this, "Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. And at this, the servant fell on his knees before him, and he said, 'Be patient with me,' he begged. 'I will pay back everything.' The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go." And then it continues in verse 28. It says, "But when that servant, the servant that had the huge debt, went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. He grabbed him and he began to choke him. And he said, 'Pay back what you owe me.' He said his fellow servant fell on his ground and begged him, 'Be patient with me and I will pay it back.' But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that happened. Then the master called the servant in and he said, 'You wicked servant, I canceled the debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had forgiven you?'" So what Jesus is trying to tell us about this story and show us is that there was a man who owed a king a lot of money. He owed him a ton of money. In fact, he couldn't pay it back. And he went to the king and said, "Can I please have my debts be forgiven?" And in that moment, the king forgave him. And he said, "No, you're completely fine." However, when that servant had other people who owed him money, that he decided to not forgive him of those debts. He decided to completely and utterly just push past it and make them pay the punishment for their debts. And in this moment, the person that we are in this story is this man who is freed from his debt and is looking for other people to owe him back. We're the person who has been completely and utterly forgiven by God's grace, love, and mercy on our life. And yet, we still go around to other people wanting them to pay the punishment and price for the things that they have done to us. But that is not what Jesus calls us to do. Jesus calls us to forgive others just like he forgave us. He calls us to forgive those who have hurt us. He tells us to show grace to those who don't deserve grace. He shows us mercy, and we are to show mercy to other people. He shows us love, and we're to show love to other people. The ones that have caused pain in our life, the ones that have caused suffering, those who have made fun of us, he calls us to forgive. And that's not easy. It's not easy at all. In fact, it's extremely difficult to show love, grace, and mercy to those who have never shown that same kind of love and grace to us. But if we begin to do so, if we begin to show this love and mercy, we will see that our relationship with the Lord will begin to grow, and we'll begin to see that other people in our lives that have hurt us and showed us pain will begin to experience the love and mercy of Jesus throughout our weeks. So here's what I want you to do. This week, I can guarantee as you are sitting in your spot right now, you can think of one person one individual in your life that you need to show mercy to, someone that has not showed you mercy in the past. What I want you to do is I want you to share that one person with your group, and I want you to think of one way that you can show them mercy. Maybe it's a conversation you can have. Maybe it's buying them coffee. Maybe it's getting lunch with them. Maybe it's showing some sort of kind act at school. You doing something for them to show that you have forgiven them and that you can show love and grace and mercy to them throughout this week.